guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for my rational perspective on Chelsea 2, Newcastle 0. Thomas Tuchel's good form continues at the Bridge tonight. Timo Werner finally ending his long goal drought in the Premier League. Mateo Kovacic absolutely outstanding. Kepa Arrizabalaga keeps a clean sheet and makes a good save for Chelsea as well. And most importantly, with those 3 points, Chelsea go above Liverpool by 2 points in the Premier League, back into that top 4 race. And really, it's a great position for Chelsea to be in. I think only 4 points now behind Man United and Leicester. For context, before Wolves, Tuchel's first game, Chelsea were 11 points behind Man United in the table. I think that tells you 2 things. Number one, Tuchel's good work and Chelsea's good form continuing and, getting up the table. But it also shows you the ridiculous nature of this Premier League season. And I've been saying this basically all year, basically. You go back to September. If you put 3 or 4 wins together in this Premier League, you're going to shoot up the table. That's just the way it's always been. And it's great to see that Chelsea are doing it at the right time and benefiting from other teams' mistakes and poor form, which is good. And Chelsea now are in a really strong position. A few weeks back, people were saying top 4 is impossible. It's not anymore. Chelsea have it in their hands in a sense. I know there are some teams who have games in hand over us, but we are playing a lot of those teams. Aston Villa, West Ham, we've got Southampton at the weekend too, who've been in poor form. I think we play Man United as well very soon at the Bridge. So Chelsea, it's a complete sort of mindset change and momentum has shifted. Now, I think tonight for me, I've just got to say, before analysing performances, I think especially the first half, the most happy I've been watching Chelsea in a while, the most enjoyable Chelsea have looked in a while in terms of being very expressive, very sharp, very energetic, a swagger to our play. I think some performers tonight deserve credit for that and that we'll get into. But I think overall, especially in that first half, you could see things coming together. And I think there's been a sense in recent weeks, maybe things haven't been clicking, although we've been getting results. I think in that first half, having that perfect blend of aggressiveness and work rate with creativity and elegance. And I love to see that from Chelsea tonight. And I think that first half, it was wonderful. Sure, you can sort of moan a little bit that Chelsea didn't go on and score 3, 4 or 5, which we could have done in this game. But I think, it's getting the job done at the moment and Chelsea getting back on form. Those wonderful performances, hopefully, where we'll score 3, 4, 5 against poor teams. Hopefully, we'll be in the distance on a Thomas Tuchel. But I think that at the moment, it's about getting those results, getting those points in a weekend where Chelsea needed to. Look at a recent run of games. Burnley, of course, a massive win against Spurs, but they've been poor recently. Sheffield United, Newcastle at home, even Southampton at the weekend, which I think is going to pose a challenge for Tuchel, a new challenge for Tuchel to deal with in terms of a team approaching us very differently. But Chelsea need to put points on the board, and they've been doing so, and that's why we've leapfrogged Liverpool recently, given their poor form, and it puts us in such a strong position. Let's look at that starting 11, because in retrospect, all the noise pre-kickoff around his team selection, his massive sort of decision to bring Kepa Arrizabalaga back into the Premier League team for the first time since October 17th against Southampton, that 3-3 draw, very chaotic. That day, Kepa, I believe, especially for the second goal, I think it was, a mess right there and sort of summed up his Chelsea career recently. But it's a massive call from Thomas Tuchel, and I think there was lots of doubts. I was very doubtful. I felt Kepa's form in the Premier League in terms of the doubts around him. Now, to be fair, we've got to point out that he made a good reaction save against Barnsley as well at a key point of the game. And I think it was a key point of the game when he made that save tonight in terms of that diving save. It reminded me a little bit of the Troy Deeney header that he saved, I think, back in the Sarri days. It reminded me a little bit of that one. But, the game could turn there. If, Newcastle score, they've been basically defending for most of the game, but it gives them that impetus to put pressure on us in the final 20 minutes. And it was a big save from him, keeping the score at 2-0, keeping that clean sheet, which Chelsea have been racking up recently. And I'm sure for Kepa, it's a good night for him, confidence boosting, 2 clean sheets back to back. I think you have to go far back to gauge when he last got 2 clean sheets back to back for Chelsea, but hopefully for him that does him the world of good. I wonder what selection wise we're going to go with now, because I still back Edouard Mendy just consistently. He's got a lot of clean sheets for Chelsea, and I still back him in aerial duels when balls come into the box as well. I'd still back Edouard Mendy, but you've got to give credit to Kepa Arrizabalaga, and it says a lot from Tuchel that he's made some big calls recently in terms of bringing back Marcos Alonso into the team, reintegrating Kepa Arrizabalaga, Georgie Kova sort of being the main midfield too. Decisions that I think maybe 1 or 2 months ago would have been ridiculous, really. But when he's making those big calls and you're getting the results and the performances being good as well, you can't really moan at those. And I think there was a lot of sort of discussion early on in this game, or at least pre-game, about Kepa's involvement. It worked out in the end, didn't it? So you can't really moan now. So credit to Kepa. Timo Werner I've got to speak about as well, because Timo was wonderful tonight. He really was. And it was wonderful to see him finally end his goal drought. I think I said this in my preview as well. There's great symmetry here because his goal drought in the Premier League in November started against Newcastle away from home, and great symmetry and great poetry that ends against Newcastle at home in the Premier League. It was the sort of goal he needed, but of course he had a big hand in the opening goal, and of course it's easy to forget that Tammy Abraham started this game when we look at the starting 11, which wasn't too dissimilar to what I selected in my preview. A few other changes he made. I think I put Chilwell in there, and of course Mendy in goal. So Kepa, Dave, Christensen, Rudiger, Hudson-Odoi at right wing back again. Georgie, Kova, double six. They very much cemented their place in that midfield too. Mason Mount, Marcus Alonso, Tammy Abraham and Timo Werner. Tammy gets injured early, and sometimes when you see that happen, it can disrupt the flow of a team. And I did wonder if Chelsea were looking for those passes behind the Newcastle defence, which we expected to be a lot deeper, or at least didn't expect the space to be there. You did wonder, without a pacey forward in behind like Tammy as the focal point, could Giroud offer that? And I was a little bit concerned because Giroud's performance against Sheffield United last weekend, I think, left a lot to be desired, to be honest. I don't think he was that good last weekend. I think he broke down a lot of play. But tonight, back to the Giroud we love to see, linking play very elegantly, and of course scoring the goal. It was a very easy finish in the end, but I think Giroud contributed something massively for Chelsea tonight. And Timo Werner, I can't remember who it was with, but he had a spat where he felt like he'd been hit in the face. I think maybe it was Joe Willock. He's been hit in the face, and then he came off the pitch, and he came back on the pitch and looked like a man possessed. Just I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to make something happen here. Drove at the Newcastle defence, and a thing we saw over and over again tonight was Marcus Alonso at left wing back. We know Marcus Alonso's ability to get into the box and his desire to get into the box like a striker. Well, we saw that work wonderfully for Chelsea tonight in terms of movement. Marcus Alonso very much drifting inwards, and Timo would go out wide in sort of that left sort of roaming number 10 position, and it worked so well, and it worked to perfection for the goal, which Timo helped set up. That ball across the box, perfect ball, a dangerous ball for any defence and keeper to deal with. And of course Olivier Giroud has a very easy finish in the end, but it shows you Timo Werner's involvement. I've stressed this over recent weeks, and you look at the stats, he's had involvement in a lot of goals recently for Chelsea despite not scoring himself. And if you're not scoring as a striker for Chelsea, you have to do other things. You have to assist. You have to hold up the ball well, link play with others. You have to have an influence in the game. And that's what Timo Werner has been doing. But finally, the magical moment came from a corner, finally scoring from a corner again after so long. I did worry that without Kurt Zouma in this team, we lack so much from corners. But I think the common theme here is Mason Mount deliveries. But Timo Werner at the back post there, very poor marking from Newcastle, but that's where Timo needs to be as a striker to poach those chances, because he's not going to head the ball in from, say, a corner instantly. He needs to get those flick-ons at the back post where a striker should be, and feeding on scraps. And it's the type of goal Timo needed. He just needed something to go in. I don't think it was ever going to be an elegant or a world-class finish like we've seen from him previously. It just needed to be a tap-in, and that's what it was. And I think it was thoroughly deserved from his work rate, from his influence tonight, and it was the goal that pretty much wrapped up the game for Chelsea. And I think Timo was given man of the match. I can understand that because in the end he scores a goal and sets up one as well, so it's hard not to decisively give him man of the match because he had a hand on the scoreline in the end. I think the closest to him for me is Mateo Kovacic, who was masterful out there tonight. He was given a lot of space. I think Newcastle struggled to deal with Kova's late runs, or at least deep runs. But Kova tonight was just majestic. He really was. I think he deserved an assist tonight, because my frustration with Kova has always been his movement from deep is brilliant, but if he gets to that final third, it's that final pass. But there were so many moments tonight, a floated ball over the top for Tammy earlier in the game where Tammy got injured and probably should have been a penalty, to be honest. I think there were several in the game over and over again that Kova played that were just wonderful. And all round tonight, his performance in terms of tracking back, in terms of winning the ball back, I think his tackling is quite underrated, to be honest. I think he's actually one of the most precise tacklers in the squad, which is key for a player in central midfield. But I think Kova, his game has been simplified under Thomas Tuchel. He seems to be having that confidence we've seen previously from him. We didn't see a lot under Lampard in the late days of him as well. And it's great to see Kova, because the natural ability is there, as I always say. And I probably going to bore you by saying this word over and over again in relation to Kovacic. You need to streamline his game, and that's what Tuchel is doing at the moment. And Kova deserves a lot of credit for his performance tonight, because he's having that influence in the final third, despite not getting the assist. I think he probably deserved one tonight. And all round his work rate too. And I think there were a lot of players tonight just work great. I think the focus, I think the attention to detail, I think tactically Chelsea knowing when to press, knowing when to sit back. I think there is a balance to this team that has been lacking. Now, I do want to stress that I think Southampton is going to be a big litmus test. I know we can go into that game and look at them and say 6 defeats in a row in the Premier League. They've been struggling recently, but just in terms of the type of team Southampton are, very, very different to what Tuchel has faced so far in terms of a team pressing up the pitch. And I did have concerns in that second half, Newcastle pressing up the pitch a little bit more, and that midfield too, sometimes, especially Jorginho being dispossessed a little bit. And I do wonder if N'Golo Kante may come in against Southampton, just in the sense of them pressing up a little bit more, how Tuchel is going to deal with that. And I think we're going to get a lot more answers, especially against Southampton, but also against Atletico Madrid next week. And I think Man United is shortly after that too. So we're going to get sterner test as expected, but Chelsea and Tuchel deserve a lot of credit because they're getting wins on the board and it's getting them up the table and in a really strong position. And the squad looks confident. I think other players too, Mason, despite not having a great performance all round, has a hand with the corner as well, and I think created a lot of chances in that first half for Chelsea, adding that energy and work rate you always expect from him. I think Callum's sort of end product today, I think, was quite disappointing. But what I love about Callum, I think Tuchel has almost created another Mason in Callum in the sense of his work rate. He's everywhere. Defensively, I don't think he's putting a foot wrong at the moment in terms of tracking back, in terms of winning the ball, in terms of harassing opposing attackers and sort of winning the ball back deep. I think it's wonderful to see. And if you can have several players like that on the pitch, like Mason, like that raw energy, it's going to help you in big games. And I think Callum deserves a lot of credit because he now is almost a guaranteed starter in the Premier League. And that wasn't the case under Lampard. His injury problems in the past are fully behind him now. And I think Callum, despite not playing amazingly, I think his work rate, his influence in defensive attributes from that wing-back position where actually he's being asked to push up the pitch a lot more, I think is really commendable. Some other players, I think in terms of defensively, Dave, I think is back to his best levels. I don't think he can be a fullback anymore, but I think Dave, once again, a classic Dave performance of doing all the right things, being in the right place at the right time. Christensen, Rudiger, you've got to give these players credit because they're keeping clean sheets. And I think that despite Newcastle being pretty bad and not offering a lot, I think we have to just be happy with the performances at the moment, at least the results at the moment, and the clean sheets, because you hope that will have a knock-on effect in the coming weeks when we play Atletico Madrid next week. A massive, massive test for Chelsea and for Thomas Tuchel and for Man United, and the big games coming for the rest of the season. You hope this run, if it can continue, say for Southampton as well, is just going to give this team more confidence, the belief when Tuchel makes big calls in a lineup that we maybe don't agree with originally, they're paying off. So I think that's good. And all round, I think just you've got to be happy. Chelsea are winning games again, and we're back on the right path under Thomas Tuchel, and we've put the bad stuff behind us. We look forward to the future now under Tuchel. And the good thing is there's a bit of a gap, isn't there, between this game and, of course, I think it's Saturday lunchtime, Southampton. Obviously, we'll do preview for that game. I do think that is a very intriguing test because I think a team that is going to press from the start. I think we saw Sheffield United press a little bit in the first half last weekend, and that gave us issues. We saw Newcastle press up a little bit more. If a team sort of set way of playing is pressing us from the off, how does Tuchel get around that? But we'll have to wait and see on that front. But Chelsea have won once again in the Premier League. I think that's 4 wins in a row: Burnley, Spurs, Sheffield United, and Newcastle United tonight. So great to see Chelsea winning again. Let me know your man of the match and your thoughts on the performance and the victory tonight in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the content as well. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.